the introduction. And Bram Mimon, I don't know how we haven't been on a meeting together like this before. That was impressive. I
We should
especially
be then soon sometime.
we should. I especially appreciate your focus on the club mission. Sometimes I think that we don't look often enough at the true meaning of that. So I appreciate it. Thank you. And thanks to all. Thanks to District 99 for putting this together and for all of you who are committing your time today, whether as a speaker or participant. I've seen a lot of activity in the chat, and I love to see that, the engagement across people and teams that leads us to success, pushes us in the right direction. I'm going to share some slides. If someone can give me that ability, it looks like I'm blocked at the moment. Let's start today by,
Glenn will give you that right away.
thank you. So I want to start today by talking about teams and our experience as team members, our ability to be successful team members. And we'll get into a little bit of depth relating to collaborative leadership and our role as a team member and a team leader in collaborative leadership, and how we prepare ourselves to be highly functioning members of a collaborative team. If I put this word up and we're talking about teamwork, you're going to think, after storming, what do we have? Forming. Now, most of us have been members of teams that have gotten only as far as storming or forming. And it's really kind of sad when teams get stuck in storming and forming and they don't go on to norming. They certainly are never going to get to performing and ending. I bumped into ending recently in this topic in some work done at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. At the end of the task, at the end of our journey as a team, we end, and we should end well. We should end well. We should understand each other. We should have learned from each other through this process, and we should be able to move on to the next thing. And I think about that especially in Toastmasters. For a club leadership team or a district leadership team, an area director and team, a division director and team, whatever team it is that we're working on, that end is a really critical piece. Let's go back to the beginning. What is it that we're doing when we're storming, and why would we call it storming? Part of this is that we're getting to know each other and we're trying to understand how the others work. Maybe we're adjusting how we work, and we're trying to establish the agreements or the way of working that's going to help us function more effectively. And those are some of the things that we're going to work on today. I want to tell you a brief story about this young gentleman who is with me in this photo, deliberately blurred, by the way, to protect his innocence and his who he is. If you know him, you could probably recognize him. He's quite a unique guy. He was serving in a district as a club growth director, and he was trying to get elected program quality director. And as happens, sometimes he didn't get elected to the next level. And he gave me a call and he said, Dan, here's what happened. I did well as a club growth director. I chartered a bunch of clubs. I was able to do this. I was able to do that. And I didn't get elected. There were a lot of things going on in the election in our district, and it just didn't happen. And to me, it was really quite interesting, his explanation of it, because it was quite clear and very early in our conversation that he was very focused on his work and his efforts as a leader rather than on the team that he was working with. And part of it was simply the use of I rather than we in the discussions about the work and the accomplishments in the team. So we had a conversation about that. It was a little difficult for him at times to receive some feedback, but he came to me looking for feedback, and I was as open and honest with him as I could be. We'll step away from him, and we'll come back to him a little bit later in our discussion today. One of the things that I've learned over time, and that what he began to learn in that discussion that we had that day is that great leadership is always managed. If we look at leaders that we admire, sometimes there are political leaders that we admire, most of the time not. Sometimes there are leaders in other contexts that we admire quite a bit. And what I mean by managed here is that those leaders approach their leadership in a very thoughtful way. They determine who they are as a person, what is driving their leadership, the things that they're able to accomplish effectively, how they need to show up in different places and different times. And for each of us, from my perspective, all of us have manageable leadership. And it's up to us to learn more about who we are and to manage our leadership in such a way that we can be more effective as leaders. So, step one in this process of learning to be a good leader and a good collaborative leader, in my perspective, is to develop self awareness. Who am I as a person? I remember very clearly years ago, I was working with some colleagues and we were taking a self assessment that was going to explain to us what our strengths were. StrengthsFinder, some of you know this who remember a few years back, StrengthsFinder was a popular self assessment tool. And I remember taking it, and I got the list back to my top 5 strengths, and I was reading it, and number one on the list was competition. And I thought, that's crazy. I'm not competitive. I mean, I do sports and I'm competitive over there, but we took this in the context of the office. I'm not sure that that's who I am. So I walked over to a colleague's workspace and chatted with her about this, and she told me what hers were, and I told her what mine were. And I said, I'm not sure about this number one thing on my list, competitiveness. And she started to laugh. And she said, Dan, you're the most competitive person I've ever met. And I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I brought that to the workplace in such a way that it would be so obvious to one of my colleagues. And it was this journey that I began on that day about developing an awareness of who I am. And the opposite, of course, is just to be clueless about who we are and to not understand who we are. And that becomes very problematic in a leadership context and in a team context. The importance of understanding who we are is critical because it helps us begin to understand others. So whether we start with Myers-Briggs or StrengthsFinder or DISC or any other type of profile that you choose, the important part is not really the tool. The important part is to gain awareness of who we are and to understand that other people are different. When we begin to understand that other people are different than we are, then we understand that we need to work differently with different people. Back and talking with him about this, he called me 6 months later and said, I think I figured out a few things about myself. I've had some deeper conversations with people, and I think I'm moving in the right direction. And I was so happy for him because he began to go down this journey, this long path of understanding who he is. And I've been able to keep in touch with him. This has been probably a 5 or 6 year journey. And to be part of hearing him talk about his journey, who he is, and how he has progressed, and how understanding himself was such a critical step in that. Step two in becoming a stronger leader and becoming a more collaborative leader is to demonstrate leadership authenticity. And there is a mistake that people make that I've seen time and time again. And the mistake is what our figure on the screen here is saying, I'll just be myself, whatever the situation. Well, what does that mean? What is myself? A long time ago, I had a boss who yelled a lot, and that was his mode of working. And it was in almost every single situation. He didn't escape from this yelling persona. That was what he brought to the game. And I'll tell you, it was not effective. I didn't stay working there very long. Many others did not stay working there very long. And as I look back on that, I can see that just being myself, whatever the situation, is not a good way to become a good leader. It enables us to just be a single faceted leader. And the world is too complicated and leadership is much too complex for us to be a single faceted leader. The way I see leadership authenticity is that we demonstrate consistent alignment with our core values, our vision, and our strategy. So that means that we're honest, that we talk with people, that we hold to whatever the rest of our core values are. In Toastmasters, we know their integrity, respect, service, and excellence. But in different environments and different contexts, they may be different. And the vision of what we're doing, was really intrigued again with Brahms' discussion about vision and what you see as your future. Vision is a real critical piece of being a leader and being part of a team. What's the vision that we have for our team, for ourselves, for our organization in the future? And what are the strategies that we're going to put in place? And then after the strategies, the tactics to accomplish that vision. Well, as a leader, we got to stick to those high level things, but we can develop and execute significant tactical flexibility. And what that means is that day to day, week to week, month to month, the situation may change. And while we're always honest, sometimes we change what we're doing. Is our club going to meet in the morning or is it going to meet in the evening? Am I going to give an in-depth explanation of a topic, or can I give more of a surface level explanation of this topic? What are the flexible natures of what we're working on that we can use in order to make the team be much more effective while still staying within the things that are most important? The next one is number 3, adapt to situations and people as leaders. This is a really critical piece, and it supports the being able to be authentic. And sometimes this confuses people. Carl Hersey and Ken Blanchard wrote a great book back in the late 80s, early 90s. Kind of tough to find it now, but if you do a Google search for situational leadership, really quite easy to find in-depth information about situational leadership. The fundamentals of this concept are that in a given situation with a given person or group of people, as a leader, I may need to be different and I may need to show up different. Now, here is a way of depicting this that I picked up online, and you can see the source down there in the bottom right-hand corner. If this looks like somebody's PhD thesis, it kind of is Carl Hersey's PhD thesis. But as we work through this chart on the vertical axis, we can see that there is a choice that we have as leaders of providing a low level of supportive behavior or a high level of supportive behavior. Now, why would we do low supportive or high supportive? And it really depends on the person or the team that we're working with. If we have a super highly motivated person, they probably don't need a lot of support. And in fact, they may react negatively if we're giving them too much support, or giving them too much attention. On the other end of that scale, we have high supportive behavior. This might be someone who is a little lower in their motivation and needs regular motivation to get them going. Sometimes this might be someone who needs a regular pat on the back and needs recognition for the work that they're doing along the way. Quite the opposite of someone who is internally motivated and doesn't need that kind of motivation. On the horizontal axis, we have directive behavior, again with low on the scale and high on the scale. Well, directive behavior is someone who is highly qualified in the area of work that they're working in. So if you have a 20-year experienced chartered accountant who is working on an accounting project, they're going to get upset if you give them the minute detail of the task. Where if you have someone who is very new and hasn't worked on a project like this really at all, has limited education in this, they're probably going to need more directive behavior than someone who has a lot of experience. Well, what does this mean for us as leaders? This theory is just fine, but it requires us to do some work. And to go back to Brahms' comments again, we got to be ready when we go into that learning environment. And every single leadership experience is a learning environment. When we're working with our team members, we need to know in advance or through the conversation in the moment, what's their level of supportive behavior they need? How much direction do they need? It would be a dream if we always had highly motivated, highly skilled people to work with. But the reality is, in teams, we just don't get that. We have people that are in all different places along this curve. And each of us in our leadership roles needs to be able to recognize where the team members are and be able to modify ourselves along the way in order to give them what they need to succeed. Now, that's a really interesting thing because you'd think that as a leader, we've climbed the pyramid, we're getting up through the org chart, and we get to the top. Shouldn't everybody just agree with me? Because I'm the boss now. And that is the absolute wrong thing to do as the boss. And yet I see it again and again and again. Toastmasters leaders come to me constantly. There will be a program quality director, and they'll say, boy, my district director, they're really tough on me. They just give orders. They don't trust us. They're following up too much. It drives me crazy that they do this. And I'll say, what do you want me to do? They said, well, I mean, you got to punish them somehow. And I'll say, okay, did you have a conversation with them about this? No, I didn't have a conversation with them about this. I just want you to do something to them to make it stop. And I'll say, that's not the way this works. You need to go have a conversation. Let's have a conversation like two grown-ups and we can work through this. And they'll say, great, I'll go do that. Supposedly they're going to go have a conversation. And then I never don't hear from them again about it. Well, the next year, the new program quality director comes in when the PQD that was telling me about their problem got elected DD. And they'll say, we have this district director now, just got elected coming into office. Boy, that person just tells me what to do. They're overly critical. They're in my business the whole time. And I think, did you learn nothing last year? Did you not, through your experience as a team member, learn what to do and what not to do? When to give support, when to pull back on the support, when to provide direction, when not to provide direction. Really, the best thing about being a team member and not being in the leadership role is when you look at the leader, sometimes you learn what to do, and other times you learn what not to do. What not to do. And some of my most valuable experiences with leaders that I've worked with over time have been when they've shown me things that I never want to do as a leader. And none of us are perfect as leaders. We're always on this journey, always on this journey. We make mistakes, we should learn from them, and then we move along. So, situational leadership, being able to adapt ourselves, such a critical part of being on a team and being a leader. Now, we've all heard of managing up. We apply these same principles when we're not happy with the leader that we're working with. Does the leader need more of this? Does the leader need less of this? Does the leader need a little more of this type and a little less of this type? As members of a team, we evaluate all the members of a team and we apply that kind of analysis and behavior in order to create the highest level of team success that we can get to. So if we think back to storming and forming, the storming is the getting to know. The forming is when we're applying this and we're getting through it in a successful way, and ultimately we reach performing. Let's go on to number 4 in the final category that I have today, practice collaboration. And in my mind, practice in this context is like an attorney practices law and a doctor practices medicine. Collaboration is a skill and a muscle that we never are finished building. Many of us have not experienced effective collaboration as a leader or a team member. We've seen collaboration, we've seen it stumble, but we've not, most of us, seen really, really high level collaboration in a personal context when we're the leader or we're the team member. And sometimes it's because we expect collaboration to just happen and we're not doing our part and making sure that it's effective and that the team works well. So these are what I view as the collaboration fundamentals. The first is to get the right people on this team. And some of you inside are saying, but I was elected and I don't get to choose the other people who are elected. So how am I going to get the right people on the team when we're all elected? And that's a critical piece of understanding. And if there are any club growth directors, I saw at least one. Program quality directors, I saw at least one. And this applies everywhere. If you don't have the right people on the small team, then you make the team bigger and you bring the right people in. You know who's on this call? Peter Kosselwan. Who's the person on the planet who has built the most new Toastmasters clubs of anybody else on the entire planet? Peter Kosselwan. If you're not in your district successfully building clubs, and Peter Kosselwan's not on your team, I would be scratching my head and be thinking about, why am I not inviting expertise of all sorts onto my team? Toastmasters is not meant to be a one-person job. One of the fundamental skills that Smedley talks about in his early writings, and he described it this way: members should serve on committees. And we call them teams today. And whether it's at the club level or any other level, and Smedley's point was, you need to learn how to do it effectively. So we get the right people on the team, we recruit who we need to be. The bigger the team is, the lighter the load is for everyone. Next, we set SMART goals. What does that mean? We need to know where we're going. We have to follow the vision or the assignment. And then we don't just say, and then by the end of the year, we're going to have done X. We build a detailed plan along the way with things that are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and bound by time. We write them down. We share them with each other. We commit to it as a team, and each person commits to their part. Then we can actually go out and do the work, and only then can we do the work. Number 3, critical. We agree on communication norms. All right, what does that mean? That we talk to each other a lot? Yeah, that's part of it. But how do we talk to each other, and when do we talk to each other? Are we using text? Are we using WhatsApp? Are we using some other kind of tool? Are we using email? Do we email at 8 o'clock in the morning and expect an answer from those who are gainfully employed and are busy at their job? No, I don't think we do. So we need to have conversations about how all of this is going to work. Because if we don't, someone's going to get a little bent out of shape down the line and say, but I sent you a message on Sunday night and I didn't hear from you till Wednesday. That's right, because I'm really busy at work on Monday and Tuesday, and I'm never going to be able to answer things on Monday and Tuesday. And I go to bed early on Sunday night because of that. Real life scenario that people have brought to me. These are the kinds of things that we have to write down, and we work through them and we work through them until everyone says, yeah, I can live with that. I can live with that. That's how we're going to work together. Number 4, have regular check-ins to see what's happening and what's not. And what do? We review the goals in number 2. What are the steps along the way that we're working on? The things that we agreed we're going to do, are we doing them? That's great. Are we not able to get them done? All right, how do we need to adjust this plan? Are you too busy? Are you busier than you thought you were? Did you think you knew how to do this and you don't really know how to do it? We're here to help you. We're not here to get mad at you. We're here to help you because this is a collaborative team. This is not an angry team. We work together and we adjust in number 5 as necessary. Critical part of this process. We adjust as necessary. Hey, we're being more successful than we thought. We can actually do a little bit more. Let's add to our goals. We can accomplish a bit extra that we weren't sure that we were going to be able to do. Or, I'm not seeing that we're going to be able to reach our goals. What's some extra work that we need to do? Do we need to recruit some more people? Do we have the right skills? Do we simply have enough hours in our time to be able to do this? Or how do we adjust? And these conversations have to be real. They have to be trust. We have to be in the room or on the Zoom call, however we've decided to communicate, trusting each other, knowing that this isn't going to be grist for the gossip mill that's going to go out and spread around the district or the club that so and so is not doing their job and this person over here is doing a great job. It's part of this group, their norms, that they trust each other. And a communication norm can be everything is confidential unless we decide as a group otherwise. And I really recommend that one. It tends to be really critical. If we do these things and the other couple of things back on points 1, 2, and 3, I think we're going to be much more successful as we build our collaborative teams. As a leader of a collaborative team, this one is really critical. I am not recognized for what I do. I am recognized for what my team does. Occasionally in my role, there will be someone who works for me, come to me, and they'll say, "Hey, this person on my team, they're doing a great job." Great. I appreciate knowing who that is. Or they'll say, "Man, we're not getting our work done because this person on my team, they're really not carrying their weight. Man, I really wish they would carry their weight." My response to that is, what are they still doing on your team? You're in charge of the people on your team, for better or for worse. You're recognized for what they do. You're no longer recognized for being an individual contributor. You're recognized for the collective effort of the team. And as a leader, you have to be part of that team and leading that team. Famous quote, and it allegedly happened just toward the end of the Napoleonic Wars. An officer rode into a little village and yelled at the citizens and said, "I am their leader. Where did my soldiers go?" Because he was by himself on his horse. Well, as a leader, if we don't know where our team members are, if they're not right there with us, in that moment, we're not really their leader. And we have to work on all of these things again to rebuild the team and create success for us as leaders. I'll close here with a little bit of the story about this district leader who came to me. Ultimately, he was elected program quality director because he figured out that he needed to be a leader of a team as much as he needed to be a leader of himself. He learned how to work with others and went on to be a very successful leader of a team that district was one of the top districts globally, was elected district director and later served as a region advisor. But he figured it out. He was able to look at himself and understand that he needed to be in a growth mode, that it wasn't about getting elected or not. It was about being a successful and collaborative leader or not. And he made that choice, just as each of us need to make that choice. Am I going to be a great leader? Am I going to manage in a collaborative way? And am I going to be part of a successful team? I hope that each of us makes that choice in a positive way. Margaret, back to you.
Thank you so much, Dan, for that. Please give him an appreciation clap for that inspiring team. Now we have about 5 minutes to take and get some questions. Who would like to take and ask Dan a question? Glenn, do you see somebody's hand up? I don't see a hand up.
I got my hand up.
Oh, Dan has his hand up, he says. I don't see any, but.
Well, I got my real hand.
Oh, wait. Dan?
Dan. Great presentation, Dan. I really think your emphasis on not only on teams forming, but particularly on that practical collaboration is really where leadership's at. Now, and I'm going to ask you the tough question because I'm talking to the guy at the top. I don't see an organization, and I've been around and promoted leadership for years, but I don't see us giving either presentations like you're suggesting here, educational sort of materials. I don't see us really setting those expectations for our leaders. I don't see us giving feedback. I don't see an organizational approach to giving feedback for that. So do we have some work to do in the organization, or am I missing something that I should be taking advantage of?
Well, I'll hone in on do we have some work to do as an organization? And the answer to that will always be yes. Yeah, we absolutely do. And we're at a point in time right now where I think we're at a critical near inflection point. Organizationally, over time, we've done exceptionally well. These last 5 years, including these last 2 years, we've not done well. And we are struggling in a lot of places to have excellent club meetings and to have teams that are successful in supporting clubs and achieving excellence and building new clubs. And I think that's one of the reasons that we're doing this today. Yeah, accountability in an organization like ours is tough. A lot of people, when they approach me with accountability, talk about punishment, but you talked about evaluation and feedback. And I actually think that's a really critical piece that we are not good at, especially with our district leadership teams. We've tried a variety of methods and on a small scale. We've never done a global one, and we've not found a way that's been effective and kind. Unfortunately, we found that there was more emphasis on anger and upset than there was on positivity and building a better future. But there is a system on the drawing board where we could provide feedback both to club officers and every single officer role that they fill, and right on up to the international president and all the roles. Whether we're able to finish developing that system, make it public, I don't know today. I appreciate the question and the concern.
I'll keep up
Somebody
working
else
towards
have a question?
leadership excellence.
Thanks, Dan. Does somebody else have a question for Dan? Tom?
Thank you, Dan. Great presentation. Excuse me. One of the things that, speaking as an old timer now, about 15, 16 years in, one of the things that I've noticed is that back in the day when my area director came into my club, it was like, wow, this is an area director coming in. And I know that I'm part of the solution of bringing that back. But I was wondering if, just the prestige and the whatever else that is, the swag of being an officer can be, I'd like some help with that maybe and how to establish it.
Yeah, I think, and I'll start with the area director. One of the things that we need to stop doing when we're recruiting area directors is talking about you only have to do a couple of speech contests and you only have to visit each club twice, because that's not really the area director's job. The area director has the opportunity to take their skills and go to other clubs and evaluate them and help those clubs be excellent. So when I look at the district mission second half, support clubs in achieving excellence, first I see club officer training there, and second I see area director visits. How is it that we recruit area directors? How is it that we talk about the transferable skills? Do we make a nice big deal of having district executive committee meetings where we appreciate them and recognize them for the work that they're doing? I think it's a holistic approach to that entire thing. I don't know that there's a silver bullet. And that and the way you said earlier, you're part of the solution. It's a local level activity that needs to function better. There are places in the world where there are elections for area directors and they're always contested. And for some of us, that seems crazy because we struggle just to recruit enough people. I think it's how we talk about the job and how we appreciate those who are doing the work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Does somebody else have a question? Shirley. And then after that, Ron.
Thank you, Margaret. Dan, I'm Shirley Kyles, and I'm the Club Director of District 43. I want to ask the question about how the district leadership is held accountable for leading the district.
Yeah.
I don't see any feedback being given at that level as to how the leader is progressing.
Yeah.
Helping build the club momentum. I don't see that happening. I don't see an accountability piece in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. And that's a piece that we're working on right now. In theory, you're accountable to the area director. That's a little tougher, excuse me, not the area director, the region advisor. But the region advisor has so much coaching and training that's part of their purview that we're not having the, hey, you need to do this conversation
Right.
often enough.
Right.
From my perspective, that's going to evolve very significantly in the near future. But that's my view, and I don't get to control everything. If anyone's ever under the illusion that CEOs have a lot of control, especially in an organization like ours, it's not true. We have influence, but there's not a lot of control. Thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it. And I will add that to some discussions I'm going to have in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
And if you have suggestions, drop me an email, drex@toastmasters.org.
Oh, I have lots of suggestions about that. And,
Send them in.
and I think one is, I guess, the process of selecting leadership. There seems to be no process. It's whoever rolls out of the next level from the club growth quality. And let's be honest, everybody is not equipped to lead in that position.
Correct.
And they don't have the abilities to lead in that position. And it's not based on Toastmasters experience. It's based on a lot of the factors that you just discussed here. However, I think that's one of the things that's holding our club and backs from growing is the leadership at the top in districts, particularly mine.
Thank you very much for that. Dan, you may want to put your email in the chat, especially if you'd like a little bit of comment back. Aaron, what question would you have?
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Dan, for the presentation. Baron Ochola joining in from Uganda, part of District 114, as well as a member of Leadership Speaks, so part of District 86. I have my background in Toastmasters is I started as a Gavelia, which was about 4 years ago, and then transitioned to Toastmasters, and I've done the entire ordeal within about 4 years. And there are two things I would want to bring up, maybe three. One is about Gavo clubs. I've found that when Gavelias have attention, then they move to Toastmasters, and we end up getting people who are experienced leaders. They know what this is about. They contribute greatly. Though I find that there's no incentive, I would call it, to the clubs to support Gavelias and just to bring in the younger lot. I know that the Gavo program is sort of CSR, but just to invest in the younger leaders such that we have stronger leaders in the future. The next is coming from Africa. At least I have been informed here and there that Africa and the Middle East are the biggest growth points for Toastmasters and other organizations right now. What type of programs can we have to capitalize on just the networking aspect of Toastmasters? For example, I've been in Leadership Speak, where we are about 70 members from 29 countries. So I network with the whole world. A lot of the members we have here do not realize Toastmasters is even next door to me in Kenya and is next door in Tanzania, or at least they know the district, but they do not know anybody else in Africa. Unless you have the opportunity to serve at the district level is when you can go to that level. So what could be done about that? Yeah, that's it, really. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, the youth question and Gavo clubs, that's a really interesting thing. And if you were curious, what he was saying is Gavalier, which is a common term in some parts of the world for members of Gavo clubs. And only in some parts of the world is there strength in youth Gavo clubs. And East Africa is one of them. District 114 is one of the places. Some parts of the Middle East and India as well are quite strong with that. Yeah, we're actually looking at an update to the entire youth program right now. It's not a short-term objective, but I see in the future a deeper connection between every kind of youth group, be it a youth leadership program or a Gavo club or whatever this looks like in the future, to a regular Toastmasters club. And there being a needed and necessary connection, and perhaps even some opportunities at the district level for some collaboration back and forth, for lack of a better term. In terms of an Africa-wide awareness, I had a conversation. I don't have an immediate solution to it, but I actually had a conversation with someone once who suggested an Africa-wide steering committee where there would be consistent and regular conversations down to the division level across the what do we have, 6 districts in Africa right now. So I think that's a potential solution. But for now, what I think that you can do is hold meetings like this, Because I don't know that you said you're a part of a club in 86, but I see from east to west across Canada and down into the US in this kind of meeting, districts, clubs can easily conduct meetings like this and bring together people from a lot of different geographic locations. It sounds to me, Baron, like you're the man to do that.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I will be in touch as well for more ideas. Thank you
Yeah,
so
please
much.
do. Please do. Love to hear from you.
Thank you very much for all that. Let's give Dan a hand of appreciation, and please put in the chat if you have some comments for him.